Hi, this is David with EV World News, where we talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here with our founder, Bill Moore. How you doing today, Bill?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Let's get right into it. Let's see here. I'm gonna share this. Let's talk. And here's, as usual, the site's always changing every day. We're going to start off talking about what's going on with the UAW. So right now, the United Auto Workers are in talks to go on strike. And if they go on strike, what kind of implication this is going to have, for the EV market. And, this is kind of a big deal because the biggest player in the EV market is Tesla, which is an American company, and they're not unionized. So they stand to benefit from this. So what are your
Yeah.
thoughts, Bill?
Well, this is the first time in like 80 plus years that the UAW had decided to threaten, best way to describe it, I guess. It's not happened yet, but threaten the big three car makers with a strike, while it is typically has to do with wages and benefits and job security and things like that, which is understandable. Um, this transition that the car industry is making between gasoline powered cars, which have had a century run, and these newer technology electric vehicles, um, that is a different ball game entirely. And there's, a chance that, I mean, the head of Volkswagen said, we could be, losing, I think it was something like 40% of the jobs in the industry as we transition, because there are less moving parts in an automobile or an electric automobile. And they don't require as much upkeep and maintenance on a regular basis. So that obviously has the United Auto workers concerned, because what's happened is that the car makers are really having to sort of divide, unlike Tesla, which builds everything within house. The car makers are basically just doing the assembly. So there's a completely different part of the business that is responsible for building the battery packs, and another part of the business that is responsible for, building the automobiles. And then at the last, on the assembly line, you see the car overhead, and then they've got these special air cushion devices that raise the battery pack up into the car. And of course, that then gets all bolted in. So those are two separate parts of the business, and the UAW and many of those partnerships are with foreign producers, typically either Korean. There's a big sort of a fight going on right now in Illinois because one of the companies coming in is a Chinese company. And that's raising sort of concerns, regarding national security issues and things like that. So the workers are concerned to make sure that their colleagues on the battery side of the business enjoy similar benefits to those that the automakers have made. And of course, if they decide, it's probably because at the moment they're so far apart. I understand the UAW has made some concessions already, but whether those are enough, we have to wait and see. But the concern is if you've got these automakers, the General Motors and the Fords and the Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler, getting in this prolonged, labor shortage or production shortage thing, that's going to benefit companies like Tesla. Because of the IRA, and I'm referring to the Inflation Reduction Act, most of the cars that you are able to buy as a consumer have to be made in America, as well as most of the parts, particularly the batteries sourced in America. And the only one that does that is Tesla. So at least of those that would not be on strike. The others have their cars, but they won't be on strike, or would be on strike. So it would only be Tesla that would basically benefit. So that's the concern: is this going to actually help or hinder this transition to cleaner electric vehicles, and who benefits from that. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball here in front of me, so I can't tell you, how it's going to play out at this moment. It could be protracted. We don't know. I mean, look how long the writer's strike has been going on.
Right.
I'm a big fan of watching, the late night comedians on TV, and I'm missing Steven. So it's been going on quite a while, and we're seeing this sort of resurgence on the part of unions and labor anyway, which is a good thing. I think obviously our concern is that, and this concern, we'll probably talk about that a little bit, maybe about what's going on with Europe. Is this concern about the incoming influx, flood, deluge of Chinese built cars that may not have the same kind of labor constraints and regulations that the U.S. system has. So
Well, the
we'll have to
argument
see.
there is that Chinese are subsidizing those sales. And there was an article on the website about that yesterday
Yeah,
that basically said that the EU is investigating the
yeah,
Chinese manufacturers because they're subsidizing, and that so they're going to have to impose tariffs to make up for the fact
yeah,
that the Chinese are subsidizing those sales. And who knows how big they're going to make that. So that's to be seen. But
yeah,
it's interesting. The UAW shows support for green energy,
yeah,
and it's crucial that assembly line workers and battery workers have pay benefits and guarantees as good as auto workers used to have. We don't secure this work, and we don't secure it at big three standards. It's not going to be a good future for anyone.
yeah. Yeah, so we'll see at midnight tonight. I'm suspecting that they will probably go ahead and do the strike. We had how long did the Kellogg strike go on here in Omaha?
Oh,
You know,
I don't know.
yeah, that went on for quite a few weeks here in Omaha. So labor is feeling a little bit of insurgency. You've got President Biden, who is a supporter of labor, and he has to walk this tight rope between, getting benefits for the average working guy and allowing the corporation still to make some kind of a reasonable profit. So
Well,
I don't envy him the job.
yeah. Well, the EV transition's raising fears of job cuts. There's been plants that have been shut
Yeah.
down, and
Well,
I
they're shutting. Yeah, they're reducing the amount of cars that are coming out of Germany's Volkswagen's big plant in Germany because of the reduction in the amount of demand for the car. So we're and how much of that is economic and how much of that is policy wise. It's probably a mixture of both.
Well, one of the things we've seen, and this includes the thing we were talking about with the lady from the Department of Energy having her experiences. People who have Teslas don't have the same experience in the United States with charging stations that people who are non-Tesla drivers have, and Tesla's got this figured out, and everybody else has to catch up. And it
Yeah,
seems like everybody else is probably 5 years behind.
yeah, at
And
least
that's a long
unfortunately.
catch up period to think that in the time that you would buy and own a car, that you're going to be behind the learning curve of the leader in the market
Yeah,
for that whole time. And that's kind of where Tesla is they're a few
yeah.
years ahead
Well,
of everybody else.
yeah. That was. I seem to remember meeting her once at a car show in Detroit. I don't, back in, if it was very brief, handshake kind of a thing. Um, but yeah, interestingly, a few days later, as of yesterday, the federal government, I think it's $150 million to be divvied out in funding to either repair or replace faulty chargers across the country. So and it's not an interesting thing is it's not just public chargers, it's private chargers. The stipulation being that if it's a private charger, like for example, the chargers over at our local, what are they, Hyundai dealer, I think. or Kia dealer anyway over on the west side of town. They've got 2 charge point chargers, but those are private. But if they were having problems with them, they could apply for these funds and replace and get them either repaired or replaced. So obviously, the administration, and the Department of Energy is keenly aware, and Miss Granholm's problems on her road trip have only exacerbated that. So
Well, it is funny how that happened. Then immediately they announced they're going to pump $100 million into fixing
yeah,
what's wrong. And the thing is, so many of these private EV chargers, you think about that. This is a completely new industry. So people
yeah,
rush to market to fill that, and there's problems with those. Well, that's not
yeah,
surprising. I always use that expression, the pioneers get all the arrows. And
yep.
that's what's happening. You've got these people who put out the early charging stations. They're taking some abuse for the quality not being what people expect, but the truth is nobody knows what that quality should be. People have an expectation, and it's not as perfect as they'd like. The problem is, if you can't charge your car, you're stuck. And that's what everybody's fear is, because they don't know how close the next charging station is.
You,
And
you see this perfectly beautiful Samsung phone, right?
mhm.
I had to replace that phone with a way more expensive one because this one only worked on 3G. And when they
Oh,
got rid of the 3G network, it no longer works. So then I had to go buy this one, which does work on 5G. That was the problem that many of these chargers ran into, is the chargers were equipped with 3G cellular communications. And as soon as the cell phone providers dumped the 3G, the thing wouldn't work anymore. The charger wouldn't work
oh,
anymore. So now
that's
you got to go
interesting news.
go around and replace probably a chip or whatever it is, inside thousands of what is there? I think I saw a number. There's something. God, what was it? 55,000 electric chargers across the country. And we're talking about eventually, with federal funding and state and local funding of it available, to increase that to 500,000 chargers. So hopefully they'll be at least equipped with 5G or
Yeah,
whatever the next
hopefully.
technology is. So
Well, I did a video yesterday about the Hilton thing. So
yep,
Hilton Hotels has 2,000, so they're going to put in 20,000 Tesla
20,000
chargers.
chargers. Yeah.
That's huge, because what would that be? That would be almost a one-third increase in the number of public charging facilities in the United States.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's a huge increase, and there's pretty much a Hilton hotel, pretty much,
yeah.
every town, well, of any size is going to have that. So,
And as soon as Hilton does it, Marriott's going to do it. What's the company my sister's an executive for, one of the big hotel chains. They're going to do it. So yeah, it'll happen. Well, we already got. You can drive. I think it's from Portland, or is it Seattle? Yeah, I think it's maybe Seattle. Seattle to, I think, Denver. And every Starbucks along the way has a charging station or multiple. Generally, they're a station with the ability to charge at least 2 vehicles simultaneously. So
that
every
makes a lot
Starbucks
of sense.
has that, yeah. And then you've got Costco's that have had them for years now. So it's happening. But that big one with Hilton, that's a significant number. Yeah,
Yeah. I've seen companies that are specializing just in creating charging stations for hotels.
yeah,
So there's more coming down the pike. I
yeah.
wanted to just for humor today, I wanted to discuss about the amazing idea that's come up for taking cargo ships, container ships, and making them greener.
Oh,
And I
this
don't
is
know
cool.
why
Yeah.
somebody really didn't think of this sooner, but I'm going to do a quick reveal, and people are just going to be blown away by this. And I mean, who would have thought you could put a sail on a boat? Now, this is new technology. People can't come and tell me that the Romans were doing this, because the Romans didn't have cargo ships that could take 3,000 containers and sail across the world. But anyways,
Yeah.
it is kind of funny, and I see these giant Cargill. I'm sitting here thinking, well, if nothing else, the cargo ships will. So supposedly it makes the cargo ships 30% more efficient. Okay,
Well,
it also
here
gives
is
them a
here's the the gentleman that the guy that is behind bar, which is the people that designed the wing sails, um, made the comment because he was asked by an interviewer. He says, "Well, isn't that slower? You know, if you're going to go just to sail." Um, and I just out of curiosity, I looked this up because I'm a fan of sailing, and I looked it up. It would take There was one particular clipper ship that would go from, I think it was Hong Kong to New York, carrying tea, and they did this. I think it was like 8 trips, and they did it under 89. Was it 89 weeks? It was like, I think it was something like that, or was it 89 days? I think it was 89 days maybe, and that was just all sale, right?
right.
Um, but what was interesting here is that the guy that I think it was Jeffrey Barr or something like that, that invented these particular sails was commenting. He says, what cargo ships are doing now, because fuel is getting more expensive and things, is they've all cut back to the minimum speed. And typically these ships now, instead of doing 15 or so knots an hour, are now doing somewhere in the 12 to 13 knot range. He said what they did on this particular trip, which was from Shanghai to I suppose Sao Paulo or somewhere, they took and they cut the speed back to what all the other cargo ships are doing, to minimize their fuel consumption, improve their efficiency, and then raise the sails, and it increased the speed of the ship to, I think he said it was 16 knots. So they picked up another 2 or 3 knots over what the ship would normally do at full cruise power. So I think he said they were saving
30%.
a ton of fuel every hour doing this. I think, and or it was
Oh,
a ton and a
a
half.
literal ton of fuel.
Oh, a ton, yeah, a ton of fuel. The interesting thing is, there's another. You can look it up, but if you've ever seen one of these engines in these cruise ships or in these cargo ships, they're like 3, 4 stories high. They're
Wow.
gigantic diesel engines, each one producing like 1,500 horsepower or something like that. And there are six of them in every ship. And so these things, so when he's saving, a ton and a half of fuel, that's a lot. In fact, one cargo ship, typical super tanker, for example, on one trip from, the Middle East, the Persian Gulf to, refinery in, the Caribbean, will emit the same amount of pollution as 1 million cars.
Wow.
1 million cars. So yeah, so boy, I used to own a 12-foot sailing dinghy. And I never cease to amaze me. There's nothing, how does this thing move? That sail billows out and it makes like a little wing and cruises along. Boy, let's use as much of that power as we can. So I think the guy's onto something. The idea of one of these gigantic kites out in front of the ship, but I think this makes a lot more sense. So we'll
No,
see.
it does. It is interesting, and it is kind of funny because when steamships first came out, they were using sails. So
Yeah, they were hybrids. Yeah.
they were looking at the steamship to be an addition to the
Yep.
sails, and then eventually they just got rid of the sails. And I think a little bit of that had to do, though, with the fact that you had to have crew to manage the sails. And
Yep.
these are probably something that the captain can probably just press a button and it goes down if they need to, and
Yeah.
they can put it back up when
Oh
they need
yeah.
to.
That was the huge expense on the old sailing ships, was the crew to have to manually handle those sales. And so it became increasingly, cost effective to shift your financial, investment over to steam power and coal, and screws, um, as opposed to hiring all these crewmen to manually handle hundreds of square yards of canvas in a storm, wet. What, 10 stories up?
Right, right. It's crazy. I had just one more thing I wanted to cover
Sure.
today, and this was electric bikes, scooters, and mopeds save more oil than all other EVs
Yeah,
combined. And this
yeah.
is
We
kind
get all excited about seeing that. Let's see. I think last global sales of electric cars last month in July, or no, July. So it wasn't last month; it was the month previous. Was over 1 million electric plug-in cars sold in 1 month, which is incredible.
it
Um,
is.
but that pales compared to the numbers of bicycles and scooters that people are buying. And when you think about, you know, they don't use any oil. They don't use any gasoline. They run off of just human muscle. I mean, they're a hybrid. The scooter types, the moped types are not. They're not hybrids. A bicycle is, because I'm still pedaling away and
Right.
contributing to it. But yeah, they did it. I don't recall. Did they list the amount of fuel that they figured they saved?
A million, well, this is all electric vehicles,
Right.
and this was in 2022, mind you.
Yeah.
Displaced 1.5 million barrels of oil per day.
Yeah.
And that's led by bikes, scooters, mopeds, and two and three wheelers. Now, what's
Yep.
interesting is these vehicles aren't that popular in the United States. You get a country like India where there's huge populations and the population's very dense. It's difficult to operate cars and trucks compared to the United States. Those vehicles are incredibly popular. And you get into any big city situation, I think there's a lot more opportunity and usefulness, especially to the electric, even the stand-up scooters,
Yeah.
where you just stand on them and ride the scooter down the road. The electric, I see a lot of use for that if you're in a, big city and you don't necessarily need a car. You can take the scooter on the train if you need to. I think there's just a lot of benefit to that, but it's pretty amazing to fathom that it's that big of a reduction. 30% of the global passenger vehicle market will be comprised of electric vehicles, and more than 100 million passenger EVs will be on the road in 2022. Let me see. 75% of global passenger vehicle sales are predicted to be EVs by 2040. We'll see.
Yeah, unless you happen to be Bob Lutz.
My only thing
That's
with
a
that
conversation for another day.
Yeah. My only thing with that claim is, I love the electrification of vehicles, and right now it seems like a great path. We don't know what kind of changes in technology we're going to see in the next 10 years because we look at all these things with hydrogen. I've seen technologies that I've seen patents on. They're going to make it so that you could, combining with electric and a hybrid, you could 5x current ranges of vehicles. And a lot of it has to do with making gasoline more efficient or making diesel more efficient. And so some of that combined with some of the upcoming tech in EVs that are going to improve the batteries and all of that, I think you may be seeing situations where somebody still may use um, carbon vehicles, but they might be getting 200 miles per gallon. And
Yeah, I'm skeptical of that. There is a limit called the Carnot limit
Mhm.
that there's only so much you can actually do theoretically with any internal
I
combustion
get
engine.
that, but one of these technologies is basically taking a 100-mile range EV battery, combined with 5 gallons of fuel and having a range of about 1,000 miles. And it'll be interesting to see, because it's so far working on prototypes, and it'll be in the first ones be available for production cars next year.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, so it will be. Anyways, good show today. We were a little long-winded today,
Oh,
as usual.
always. Once you get me on, you can't stop me.
That's all right.
So
I love
sorry.
it. I love it. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching
All
in.
right.
Like and
Thanks a lot,
subscribe.
everybody.
And we will be back at this on with Bill on Tuesday. I'll be on here with ProTrader Mike